Now, you mentioned the impact on health communication can have in your
Hmm.
book, and I'm curious, like, can you explain that a bit deeper?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things. We have mental health benefits and we have physical health benefits. And what's interesting is now we have better technology to measure improvements in behaviors. So we can measure, let's say, hormonal levels, particularly oxytocin. It's a bonding hormone, right? We think of it typically in terms of childbirth, but it's not just during childbirth. It's when two people are communicating, they can bond together, and those levels of oxytocin can rise if you're communicating and you're connecting well. And this is men and women, by the way. Oxytocin sometimes is thought as a woman's hormone, but it's really not true. It's in both males and females. So we can all benefit from a better connection. So we can measure hormonal levels. We can measure cortisol, which is stress, the stress hormone. So, if you have a poor communications, an argument or conflict of some sort, that can be measured in the lab. We don't do this necessarily, in everyday situations, but when the behaviors are studied for research purposes, they
Mhm.
are able to quantify. And it's really important that we quantify the results of behaviors that we're recommending so that people know this is not just a feel good technique. This is not just a recommendation or advice someone's giving. This is backed by science. It's evidence based. So, yeah, measuring the cortisol, measuring the oxytocin, but we can look at things like heart rate,
Mhm.
respiratory rates, things like that. We all know that we might um, talk more quickly when we're nervous or when we're
Mhm.
stressed. We might feel our heart beating, things like that. Well, these can be quantified, and so we know the effects because they can be measured. But from a mental health standpoint, and I find this really interesting, and that is we have tools like the functional MRI that enables us to study the brain and the impacts in the brain of certain behaviors. So we can monitor when someone is communicating what areas light up, how much lights up, what is being activated within our brains. And so what we found is that we can generate more ideas. We can have that big picture thinking. We can brainstorm better, or we tend to be more creative when we've had a positive interaction. So these are reasons that we can justify, if you will, learning to communicate better because they benefit us as individuals. And we also can look at there are a lot of models in the field of social psychology and leadership psychology that look at meaningful work and purpose and connectivity. And so we find that some of these models, like Seligman's PERMA model, talks about purpose, meaning, relationships, relatedness to other people. So, how these benefit our overall well-being and help us be better performers, really, because we're in a better place, let's say, to work at our highest level. So, in coaching for performance, I often go back to some basic skills because when we've mastered a few basic skills, then we've enabled ourselves. We're kind of positioned to do our best work, and so it is important and to recognize these benefits. And communications is one of those that is probably the easiest way to elicit positive emotion, which we know
Mhm.
accrues in the body, and it has compounding effects. So as easy as a smile or a joke or a conversation that went well, these things restore us, and it actually accumulates in our body to help us towards um, well-being.
Yeah, fascinating. And that, gosh, I got so many questions from that because, yeah, it really makes sense. If you're unable to get along with others, if you're unable to have a healthy conflict or manage situations, uphold boundaries, really, it's a disability in a way, especially in a workplace where it's communication is a necessity.